The station floated in the darkness between stars. It was old, very old. The elder races had built it long before humans learned to make fire. They called it Volanthos Prime, and it was the largest structure in the known galaxy. 4,000 species sent their representatives here. They came from every corner of the universe. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some had no bodies at all and existed only as patterns of light. They gathered in the Great Hall, a room so large that clouds formed near its ceiling. This was the Galactic Assembly, where the fate of civilizations was decided. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the human section. It was small. Humanity had only joined the assembly 30 years ago, and the other species still treated them like children. Elena did not mind. She was proud to represent Earth, even if their seats were in the back corner. The session that day started like any other. Trade agreements. Border disputes. The same boring discussions that filled most meetings. Elena fought to stay awake. Her aide, a young man named Thomas, whispered updates about messages from Earth. Then the HFY ambassador rose to speak. The HFY were ancient. Their civilization was older than most stars. They looked like tall insects with silver shells, and they spoke in clicks that the translation devices turned into words. When a HFY spoke, everyone listened. "We bring news of great sorrow," the ambassador announced. "The Pyrethian system faces destruction." The great hall fell silent. Elena leaned forward. She had never met a Pyrethian, but she knew of them. They were a peaceful species. They had 3 worlds in their system, filled with cities and farms and schools. 11 billion souls called those worlds home. The HFY continued. "A rogue neutron star has been detected. It was pushed from its path by an ancient gravity well. It now travels toward the Pyrethian system at great speed." Screens around the hall lit up with images. Elena saw a ball of impossible density, a dead star compressed into something smaller than a city, but heavier than the sun. It moved through space like a bullet, and nothing could stop it. "Time until impact," the HFY said. 14 standard months. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Elena did the math in her head. 14 months. That was not enough time. Not nearly enough. The Veldokari ambassador stood next. The Veldokari were the masters of numbers. Their entire species thought in equations. They looked like floating jellyfish, and their tentacles danced as they calculated. "We have analyzed the situation," the Veldokari said. "The Pyrethians have 600 vessels capable of long-range travel. These ships can carry perhaps 200 million people to safety. This represents less than 2% of their population." 2%. Elena felt sick. Furthermore, the Veldokari continued, "We have calculated the resources required for a larger evacuation. No single species has sufficient ships. A combined effort from all willing members would increase the survival rate to perhaps 2.3%. The cost would be enormous. Trade routes would collapse. Other obligations would fail. We advise against such action." Elena could not believe what she was hearing. They were talking about 11 billion people, like they were numbers on a page. The HFY nodded slowly. "The mathematics is clear. We propose the traditional response. A memorial committee will be formed to honor the Pyrethian civilization. Their art, their music, their history will be preserved. Future generations will remember them." Other ambassadors nodded. This was how things were done. When a civilization faced extinction, the assembly remembered them. That was the limit of their compassion. Elena looked around the hall. She saw thousands of alien faces. Some looked sad. Some looked bored. None of them looked like they planned to do anything. She thought about the Pyrethians. She imagined their children playing in parks, their families eating dinner together. They're old people telling stories to the young. In 14 months, all of it would be gone. The neutron star would not just kill them. It would erase them. Their worlds would be torn apart. Nothing would remain. Her hand was raised before she realized what she was doing. The assembly noticed. Heads turned. The human ambassador wanted to speak. How unusual. How amusing. The assembly recognizes the representative from Earth, the HFY said. Elena stood. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. I have a question. Speak. What if we tried anyway? Silence. Total silence. The Veldokari ambassador made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. Tried what, young one? The mathematics is clear. Evacuation is impossible. You said a combined effort could save more people, Elena said. What if we made that effort? Did you not hear? Another ambassador called out. The cost would be enormous. Resources would be wasted on a lost cause. They are not a lost cause, Elena said. They are people. More laughter. Some of it was kind, the way adults laugh at children who say foolish things. Some of it was not kind at all. Humanity is young, the HFY said. You do not yet understand. Some things cannot be changed. The universe is cruel. We must accept this. Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that accepting cruelty was itself a cruelty. But she knew they would not listen. They had made up their minds long ago. I request a recess, she said. I must consult with my government. The request was granted. It was a small thing. The assembly could wait a few hours while the humans talked among themselves. It would change nothing. Elena walked to the communication room. Her hands were shaking as she connected to Earth. She told them everything. The neutron star. The Prometheans. The assembly's decision to do nothing. She expected sympathy. Maybe anger. What she got was something else. How many ships would we need? The United Earth Council asked. Thousands, Elena said. Tens of thousands. More than we have. More than anyone has. There was a long pause. Elena could hear people talking on the other end. Arguments. Calculations. Then a voice came back, clear and firm. Start making calls. We are sending everything. Elena returned to the assembly. Her delegation followed. All of them had received messages. All of them knew what was coming. She stood at her place and waited for the session to resume. The other ambassadors looked at her with patient smiles. Poor humans. So emotional. So naive. The assembly will now continue, the HFY announced. We will vote on the memorial committee. That will not be necessary, Elena said. Heads turned again. Earth has made a decision, Elena continued. We are mobilizing for evacuation. The Veldokari laughed again. Mobilizing what? Your species has 400 ships at most. You would save a fraction of a fraction. We are aware of the mathematics, Elena said. She looked around the hall. 4,000 species. 4,000 civilizations. Not one of them willing to try. We are choosing to ignore it. She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, every human delegate rose and followed. The cosmos watched in horror as humans rushed from the assembly. The doors of the great hall closed behind the human delegation. For a long moment, no one spoke. 4,000 species sat in confused silence. This had never happened before. No one walked out of the Galactic Assembly. The HFY ambassador clicked his mandibles together. Most unusual, he said. The humans appear to be upset. They are young, the Thesari delegate said. The Thesari were a gentle species, covered in soft blue fur. They were known for their medicine and their kindness. They have not yet learned that some tragedies cannot be prevented. They will learn, the Veldokari agreed. When their ships return empty and their resources are wasted, they will understand. The mathematics does not lie. The assembly moved on to other business. The humans would calm down. They would see reason. This was how things had always been done. But across the galaxy, something was already changing. Elena Vasquez stood in the communication hub of the human embassy. Screens covered every wall. Messages poured in from Earth, from Mars, from the colonies on Europa and Titan. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How could they help? The Council has declared a state of emergency, her aide Thomas reported. All military vessels are being recalled. Cargo ships are being requisitioned. They are asking for volunteers. How many have signed up? Elena asked. Thomas looked at his screen. His eyes went wide. Ambassador, the servers are crashing. There are too many. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes. She had hoped her people would respond. She had not expected this. On Earth, the news spread like fire. 11 billion people were going to die, and the galaxy had decided to do nothing. But humanity had decided to try. That was all anyone needed to hear. Factories that made luxury goods switched to building life support systems. Shipyards that had been closed for years opened their doors. Engineers who had retired came back to work. Students left their schools to help however they could. The military moved first. Admiral Chen Wei took command of the evacuation fleet. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was strong when he addressed his crews. We are not going to war, he told them. We are going to save lives. Every person we bring home is a victory. Every child we rescue is worth more than any battle we could ever win. This is what we train for. This is why we exist. His ships launched within hours. They were fast and well-armed, designed for combat. Now they would carry refugees instead of weapons. But the military ships were not enough. Not even close. The call went out to every human who owned a spacecraft. Miners who worked the asteroid belts heard it first. These were rough people, used to danger and hard work. They lived in ships that were ugly and practical, built for hauling rock, not passengers. They want us to do what? A miner named Jackson asked when he got the message. His partner, a woman named Reyes, read the details. They want us to go to Pyrethia. Help with the evacuation. They will pay for fuel and modifications. Modifications? Life support. Extra capacity. They want us to carry people. Jackson looked at their ship. It was a good ship, but it was built for 2 people, not 20. The journey to Pyrethia would take weeks. The conditions would be terrible. How many people are going to die if we do not go? He asked. Reyes did not answer. She did not need to. Start packing, Jackson said. We leave tomorrow. Across human space, the same conversation happened 1,000,000 times. Families talked around dinner tables. Business partners argued in offices. Friends debated in bars. The question was always the same. Could they afford to help? Could they afford not to? Some people said no. They had responsibilities. They had fears. They had reasons that made sense to them. No one blamed them. This was a choice that each person had to make for themselves. But millions said yes. They said yes even though they were scared. They said yes even though they knew the odds were bad. They said yes because somewhere out there, 11 billion strangers needed help. And doing nothing felt like a kind of death. The Galactic Assembly watched with growing confusion. They are actually doing it, the Veldokari ambassador reported to his government. The humans are gathering ships. Our sensors show hundreds of vessels converging on their home system. Hundreds? His superiors asked. That is not nearly enough. I know. But they are not stopping. More arrive every hour. They are modifying civilian ships for passenger transport. The inefficiency is staggering. What do they hope to accomplish? The ambassador thought for a long time. I do not know, he finally admitted. By our calculations, they will save perhaps 3% of the Pyrethian population. They will exhaust their resources. They will lose ships and crew to accidents. It is completely irrational. Then why are they doing it? The ambassador had no answer. Meanwhile, Elena worked without rest. She sent messages to every species she had ever made contact with. She begged. She bargained. She called in every favor humanity had earned in 30 years of membership. We are not asking you to save everyone, she told the other ambassadors. We are asking you to help. 1 ship, 10 ships, whatever you can spare. Every vessel matters. Every life matters. Most species refused. The mathematics was clear. The effort was doomed. Why waste resources on failure? But some listened. The Zasari were the first to break ranks. Their ambassador, a gentle creature named Velith, came to Elena's office in person. My people are healers, Velith said. We cannot build warships or haul cargo, but we have medical frigates. 17 of them. They were built to help in disasters. And? Elena asked, afraid to hope. We are sending them to Pyrethia. We will not let your species carry this burden alone. Elena hugged the ambassador. It was not proper diplomatic behavior. Velith did not seem to mind. Word spread. The Dasari were helping the humans. The impossible evacuation had its first allies. Then came the Ulmec Syndicate. They were traitors, motivated by profit. They had no reason to join a doomed mission. But their leader, a creature with too many eyes and not enough conscience, made a surprising announcement. We have discovered unused cargo capacity in our fleet, the Syndicate declared. It would be wasteful to let it sit empty. We will transport Pyrethian refugees for a reduced fee. Everyone knew it was a lie. The Syndicate was not doing this for profit. They were doing it because the humans had made them feel something they did not want to name. More species joined. Not many, not enough. But more than anyone had expected. The fleet gathered in human space. Military cruisers flew beside mining ships. Luxury yachts floated next to cargo haulers. Medical frigates from Desser joined trading vessels from a dozen worlds. It was the strangest armada the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Chun looked at the assembled ships and felt pride mixed with fear. They had gathered more than he had dared to hope. But it was still not enough. It would never be enough. Set course for Pyrethia, he ordered. We have people to save. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. Across the galaxy, sensors tracked their movement. The Galactic Assembly watched in silence. The humans were actually going to try. The Pyrethian system was beautiful. 3 worlds circled a yellow sun, each one covered in blue oceans and green forests. Cities sparkled on the night sides like jewels. From space, it looked like paradise. But everyone who lived there knew the truth. Death was coming. In 11 months, a neutron star would tear through their system. Their worlds would be ripped apart. Their sun would be thrown from its path. Everything they had built over 10,000 years would be erased in hours. Premier Kothra stood in her office and watched the sky. She was old for a Pyrethian. Her scales faded to pale gray. She had led her people through floods and famines and wars. But she had never faced anything like this. The Galactic Assembly has sent their response, her aide reported. They are forming a memorial committee. Kothra closed her eyes. A memorial. That was all they would get. A museum display in some distant station. A footnote in galactic history. Here lies Pyrethia. They had nice art. And our own evacuation efforts? She asked. We have moved 4 million people to our colony ships. We can save perhaps 200 million more before the end. 200 million out of 11 billion. Kothra did the math she had already done 1,000 times. Less than 2%. 98% of her people would die. She had already made the terrible decisions. Who would be saved? The young, the skilled, those who could rebuild a civilization from nothing. Everyone else would stay behind. Kothra had decided to stay with them. "Premier," her aide said suddenly, "we are receiving a transmission." "From the humans?" Kothra turned. The humans. She knew little about them. A young species from a small planet. They had only been in the assembly for 30 years. What could they possibly want? The message played. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but determined. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth. We are coming to help. Our fleet will arrive in 3 weeks. We ask that you prepare for a large-scale evacuation. Coordinate with Admiral Chun Wei upon arrival. Do not give up. We are coming." Kothra stared at the screen. She replayed the message. Then she replayed it again. "Is this real?" she asked. Her aide checked the signals. "It appears genuine, Premier. And our sensors are detecting a large fleet approaching. Hundreds of vessels." "No, wait." The aide's voice changed. "Thousands of vessels." 3 weeks later, the human fleet arrived. Kothra watched from her orbital station as the ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They filled her screens like a swarm of insects. Big ships and small ships. Military vessels and civilian craft. Some were sleek and beautiful. Others looked like they had been built from spare parts, and Hope. Admiral Chun's face appeared on her communication screen. He was a human with gray hair and kind eyes. "Premier Kothra," he said. "I am Admiral Chun Wei. We are here to help. How many ships do you have?" Kothra asked. Her voice was shaking. "We stopped counting at 4,000. More are coming every day. 4,000 ships. It was impossible. It was insane. And it was real. The evacuation began immediately. Humans landed on all 3 Pyrethian worlds. They brought food and medicine and engineers. They brought translators and counselors and teachers. They brought everything they had. The first challenge was communication. Pyrethians spoke a language of clicks and whistles that human throats could not produce. The translation devices helped, but they were slow and clumsy. So the humans learned gestures. They learned facial expressions. They learned to communicate with their eyes and their hands. The second challenge was trust. The Pyrethians had been told they were going to die. They had accepted it. Now strange creatures from a distant world were asking them to leave everything behind and trust that they would be safe. A human engineer named Marcus found himself in a small village on the second world. The villagers watched him with fear and suspicion. They did not believe he was there to help. Marcus did not know what to say. He did not speak their language well enough for speeches. So he did the only thing he could think of. He started working. He helped repair a broken water pump. He carried supplies for the elderly. He played games with the children, using rocks and sticks because they had no toys in common. Day after day, he worked beside the villagers until his hands were raw and his back was sore. On the 7th day, an old Pyrethian approached him. She was the village elder, bent with age. She looked at Marcus for a long time. Then she reached out and touched his face. "Why?" she asked. The word came through the translator as a simple question, but Marcus understood its weight. "Why are you here? Why do you care? Why are you helping strangers die better?" Marcus thought about his family back on Earth. His daughter was 8 years old. She had asked him the same question before he left. "Because you are people," he said. "And people help people." The elder stared at him. Then she turned to her village and spoke in rapid clicks. Marcus did not understand the words, but he understood what happened next. The villagers began to pack. Across the system, similar scenes played out. Humans worked beside Prometheans. They shared meals. They shared stories. They shared grief and hope and fear. Slowly, the walls of suspicion crumbled, but the work was brutal. Ships arrived and departed constantly. Loading refugees was slow and difficult. The vessels were crowded beyond belief. Life support systems strained to keep everyone alive. Food was rationed. Water was recycled. Privacy did not exist. Accidents happened. A cargo ship lost power during loading. 47 humans and 300 Prometheans died when the life support failed. A transport vessel collided with a mining ship. No survivors. Admiral Chun received the death reports every evening. The numbers grew larger every day. Humans were dying for strangers they had never met. He wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Then he received another report. 1 million Prometheans evacuated. 2 million. 5 million. The numbers grew larger too. Keep going, he ordered. We stop when the star arrives. Not before. Elena Vasquez came to Pyrethia in the second month. She wanted to see the work with her own eyes. What she found amazed her. The fleet had grown. More ships arrived every week. Some came from species that had refused to help before. They offered no explanations. They just showed up and started working. The Vasari medical frigates saved thousands of lives. The Ulmec traders moved millions of refugees. Even the proud Veldokari sent a small delegation of engineers to help with logistics. Why did you come? Elena asked a Veldokari technician. The creature's tentacles rippled with what might have been embarrassment. The mathematics changed. It said, how? We do not know. But watching your species die for strangers, we found that our calculations no longer felt correct. So we came to recalculate. Elena smiled. It was not a perfect answer, but it was a start. The evacuation continued. Ships flew back and forth without rest. Humans and Prometheans worked side by side. And slowly, impossibly, the numbers grew. The galaxy watched. And the galaxy wondered, what kind of species was this? What kind of madness drove them? And why did it feel so much like something else? Something the elder races had forgotten long ago. Something that looked almost like hope. Time moved differently during the evacuation. Days blurred into weeks. Weeks blurred into months. The humans and their allies worked without rest, without pause, without mercy for themselves. Elena Vasquez collapsed on day 90-7. She was in the coordination center when it happened. One moment she was reviewing transport schedules. The next moment she was on the floor. Her body had simply stopped working. Too many hours without sleep. Too many days without proper food. Too much weight on shoulders that were only human. They carried her to a medical bay. A Dazari doctor examined her and clicked in worry. She needs rest, the doctor said. Many days of rest. Her body is failing. Admiral Chun came to see her. He stood beside her bed and watched her sleep. She looked old. 30 years of age, but she looked like she had lived 100. We should send her home, his aide suggested. She will refuse, Chun said. He knew Elena. She would not leave until the job was done. When Elena woke, she proved him right. How many? She asked. It was the first thing she said. Not where am I, not what happened. Just how many? 3.2 billion, Chun told her. We have saved 3.2 billion people. Elena closed her eyes. 3.2 billion. It was a miracle. It was not enough. How much time do we have? 43 days. 43 days. And more than 7 billion Prometheans still waited for rescue. Then help me up, Elena said. I will sleep when they are safe. The doctors protested. Her body needed rest. But Elena would not listen. She returned to work within hours, moving slower but refusing to stop. Across the system, everyone pushed harder. The ships flew faster. The loading crews worked longer shifts. Engineers found ways to squeeze more people into every vessel. Safety margins were reduced. Comfort was forgotten. All that mattered was saving one more life. Then one more. Then one more. Jackson and Reyes, the miners who had been among the first volunteers, made their 12th trip to Pyrithia. Their ship was designed for 2 people. They had modified it to carry 25. The journey was brutal. The air was thin. The food was terrible. But every trip, they saw the faces of the people they saved, and every trip, they flew back for more. "I am so tired," Reyes said one night. They were floating in orbit, waiting for their next load of refugees. "I know," Jackson said. "Do you think we are making a difference?" Jackson looked out the window. Below them, the Pyrethian world glowed like a jewel. In 40 days, it would be gone. "We saved 600 people," he said. 600 people who would be dead without us. "I think that is a difference." Reyes nodded. She was too tired to cry, but she wanted to. "One more trip," she said. "Then we rest." They made 7 more trips before the end. The neutron star was visible now. It appeared in the Pyrethian sky as a faint blue dot, no brighter than a dim star. But everyone knew what it was. Everyone knew what it meant. The countdown had moved from months to weeks to days. Premier Kothra had refused evacuation until the last possible moment. She wanted to lead her people until there were no more people to lead. Now, with 3 days remaining, Admiral Chun came to her personally. "It is time," he said. "You have done all you can. Let us save you now." Kothra looked at the human. She had learned to read their faces over the past months. She saw respect in his eyes, and sadness, and something else that she had never expected to see from an alien species. Love. This strange creature loved her people. He had never met them before this crisis. He would probably never see them again. But he loved them enough to die for them. "How many did we save?" she asked. 4.2 billion, Chun said. "We saved 4.2 billion people." Kothra felt the number settle into her bones. 4.2 billion. 38% of her population. The Galactic Assembly had said 2% was the maximum. The humans had proven them wrong, but it also meant that 6.8 billion would die. More than half her people. The young and the old. The sick and the poor. Those who had been too far from the evacuation points. Those who had refused to leave their homes. 6.8 billion souls who would vanish when the star arrived. "I will come," Kothra said. "But I want to be the last." Chun nodded. He understood. The final evacuation was chaos. Ships pushed their engines past safe limits. Crews worked until they collapsed. Every second mattered. Every life counted. The neutron star grew brighter and brighter in the sky. Marcus, the engineer who had worked in a small village, found himself in a city that was still half full. The last transports were loading. Thousands of Pyrethians pushed toward the ships. A child fell. The crowd moved forward. Marcus saw what was about to happen and threw himself over the child. Bodies pressed against him. He could not breathe. He could not move. He thought he was going to die. Then hands reached down. Pyrethian hands. They pulled him up. They pulled the child up. They made space where there was no space. Marcus looked at the faces around him. They were terrified. They were desperate. But they had stopped to help a stranger. "Thank you," he said. A Pyrethian woman nodded. She was holding the child he had saved. "You came for us," she said. "We will not forget." The last ships launched with hours to spare. Marcus watched from orbit as the world below grew smaller. He had done everything he could. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But he had tried. That was all anyone could do. Premier Kothra was on the last ship. She stood at a window and watched her homeworld for the final time. The neutron star was a blazing point of light now, growing brighter by the minute. Admiral Chun stood beside her. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say. The star arrived. It happened faster than anyone expected. One moment, the Pyrethian worlds were there. The next moment, they were being torn apart. The star's gravity ripped through the system like a blade. Planets crumbled. Moons shattered. The sun itself was pulled from its position, thrown into the void like a discarded toy. Kothra watched her world die. She did not cry. She had no tears left. Around her, humans and Pyrethians stood together in silence. They had saved 4.2 billion people. They had lost 6.8 billion more. Elena Vasquez came to stand beside the premier. She was pale and thin, her body still fighting the exhaustion that had nearly killed her. "I am sorry," Elena said. "We should have saved more." Kothra turned to look at her. This small human. This fragile creature who had moved the galaxy. "You saved more than anyone else would have tried," Kothra said. "You gave us hope when the universe offered none. Do not apologize for that. Do not ever apologize for that." Elena nodded. But in her heart, she knew she would carry the weight of the ones they lost for the rest of her life. They all would. 1 year after the destruction of Pyrethia, the Galactic Assembly gathered again. The Great Hall was silent. 4,000 species sat in their assigned places, but something had changed. The air felt different. The old certainties that had guided galactic civilization for 1,000,000 years now seemed less certain. The human section was no longer in the back corner. By popular demand, it had been moved to a position of honor near the center. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood there, older than her years, her hair touched with gray that had not been there before. Beside the human section was a new delegation. The Pyrethians had been given a permanent place in the assembly. They represented the 4.2 billion survivors who now lived on colony worlds. Donated by species across the galaxy, Premier Kothra stood at the Pyrethian podium. She was the last leader of the old Pyrethia. Now, she was the first leader of the new one. "I stand before you today," she said, "to speak about what happened to my people, and to speak about what happened because of it." The assembly listened. For once, no one interrupted. No one calculated. No one debated the mathematics. 14 months ago, this assembly told us to die, Kothra said. You called it inevitable. You called it mathematics. You offered us a memorial and asked us to accept our fate. She paused. Her eyes moved across the hall, touching every delegation. Then the humans stood up. They asked one question. What if we tried anyway? Kothra turned to the human section. Elena met her gaze. That question changed everything, Kothra continued. The humans did not have the ships to save us. They did not have the resources. They did not have the permission of this assembly. But they had something else. They had the courage to try when trying seemed foolish. The Kethvari ambassador shifted in his seat. His mandibles clicked nervously. They came to us with everything they had, Kothra said. They came with military ships and mining vessels. They came with cargo haulers and personal yachts. They came with doctors and engineers and ordinary people who had never left their home world before. They came knowing they would fail. They came anyway. She took a breath. The next words were hard to say. 6.8 billion of my people died when the star arrived. I will carry their names in my heart until I join them. But 4.2 billion survived. 4.2 billion people who would be dead right now if the humans had listened to your mathematics. The hall remained silent. And they did not come alone, Kothra continued. The Lissari joined them. The Olmec joined them. One by one, species that had voted against helping us found reasons to help anyway. Because the humans showed them something they had forgotten. They showed them that trying matters. Even when you lose. Especially when you lose. Cawthra stepped back from the podium. I have said what I came to say. Now I will let the humans speak for themselves. Elena walked slowly to the center of the hall. She had not wanted to give this speech. She had wanted to rest. She had wanted to grieve. She had wanted to forget the faces of the people she could not save. But she was here because she had to be. Because some things needed to be said. You asked us why, she began. Her voice was soft but steady. Since the evacuation ended, 100 species have asked us the same question. Why did you ignore the mathematics? Why did you spend lives and treasure on a losing cause? Why did you throw yourselves into certain failure? She looked around the hall. I will tell you why. But first, I want you to understand something about humanity. Something the elder races have never quite grasped. Elena raised her hand and pointed to her own chest. We are fragile, she said. Our lives are short. We have no shells to protect us. No natural weapons. No ability to survive in vacuum or extreme heat or radiation. By the standards of most species in this hall, we are barely more than animals. A few delegates stirred uncomfortably. Elena smiled. But our weakness taught us something. It taught us that we do not have time to wait for perfect odds. We do not have centuries to calculate. We are dying from the moment we are born. Every human knows this. We carry our mortality with us like a shadow. She paused. So we learned, long ago, that the only battles worth fighting are the ones where trying matters. Not winning, trying, because we know we will not live forever. We know we will not see every tomorrow. All we have is today. And what we do with today is what defines us. Elena turned to face the HFY directly. You have been civilized for 10 million years. You have seen countless species rise and fall. You have learned to calculate the odds and accept the results. You call it wisdom. Her voice grew stronger. We call it surrender. Because there is no wisdom in watching people die when you could have tried to save them. There is no mathematics that makes that acceptable. The moment you stop trying to save lives because the odds are bad, you have lost something that no calculation can measure. The Vuldakari ambassador spoke up. What have we lost? Elena looked at him. Your soul. Your purpose. The thing that makes you more than a very complicated machine. The hall was completely silent. We did not save everyone, Elena continued. We know that. 6 billion Perithians died while we watched. I will carry their weight for the rest of my life. But I will also carry something else. The knowledge that we tried. That when the universe said it was impossible, we said we would do it anyway. She walked back toward her seat. That is why we rushed from this assembly 1 year ago. Not because we knew we would win, but because we knew that not trying would be a defeat worse than any failure. Elena sat down. The speech was over. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the HFY ambassador rose. The collective has a motion to propose, he said. His voice was strange, heavy with emotion that his species rarely showed. We propose a new doctrine for the Galactic Assembly, a change in how we respond to extinction-level events. He looked at Elena. We propose to call it the Vasquez Doctrine. The proposal was simple. When sentient lives were at stake, the mathematics would no longer be the only consideration. The Assembly would try, even when trying seemed hopeless. Even when the odds said failure was certain. They would try because trying mattered. The vote was unanimous. After the session, Premier Cawthra found Elena standing by a window. The old ambassador was staring at the stars. You changed everything, Cawthra said. Elena shook her head. I did not change anything. I just reminded them of something they forgot. What is that? Elena turned to face her friend. That hope is not a calculation. It is a choice. And it is the only choice that really matters. Kothra stood beside her, and together they watched the stars. Somewhere out there, 4.2 billion Perithians were building new lives on new worlds. They were planting gardens and raising children and dreaming of futures that should have been impossible. And across the galaxy, species that had forgotten what it meant to hope were slowly remembering. The cosmos had watched in horror. As humans rushed from the assembly, now the cosmos was learning to rush with them.